evening, everyone. We're going to be continuing with our look at Faith's Hall of Fame in Hebrews chapter 11. In Emmanuel Church at the moment, we are doing a series on Sundays and also following through in our life groups, which is our cell groups or small groups, on the power of faith. And so I thought that I would speak a little bit on Hebrews 11, because we're not covering that so much on Sundays, and just look at the examples, really, that the author of Hebrews chose. In Hebrews 11, he chose examples from the Old Testament. He was going through the Old Testament to find examples that showed us what it was like to live by faith in the Old Testament, and so that we could learn from these faith heroes. Well, last week we looked at Noah, and this week we're going to look at Abraham. We may come back to him as well because he's mentioned later on, but we're going to have a look at the faith of Abraham. Now, Abraham is one of the most important figures in the Old Testament because in the New Testament, those that believe are seen to be his descendants. And in Romans chapter 4, Paul says, those that believe, whether Jew or Gentile, we are the children of Abraham. So the descendants of Abraham, the true descendants of Abraham, are those that believe. They get his inheritance. And so Romans 4 says that whether a Jew or Gentile, if we believe in Christ, then we walk in the footsteps of faith of our father Abraham. And so let me just read the passage from Hebrews 11, verse 8 following. Show that for you. By faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place which he would receive as an inheritance. And he went out, not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt in the land of promise, as in a foreign country, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same promise. For he waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And there's 3 points I want to make from this for our faith encouragement to learn from Abraham. The first is that he went out not knowing where he was going. The second was that he dwelt in the land of promise as if he was a foreigner. And thirdly, that he was waiting for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And if you read on in Hebrews 11, you find that that's the heavenly city of Jerusalem. So these 3 things: went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he went out not knowing where he was going. By faith, he dwelt as a foreigner in the land of the promise, dwelling in tents. And by faith, he waited for a city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. So, to begin with, firstly, by faith, Abraham obeyed when he was called to go out to the place where he would receive an inheritance. And he went out not knowing where he was going. This is very powerful because this speaks about what it's like to begin your life faith with God. Abraham was a pagan. He knew nothing about God. His father knew nothing about God. His father worshipped idols, Joshua tells us. And when God appeared to Abraham, Abraham had no background for it. But God spoke to him and said, I want you to leave your family. I want you to leave your home. I want you to leave where your family lives. And I want you to go to a place that I will show you. And Abraham believed God. It was reckoned to him as righteousness. And he went out not knowing where he was going. This is a powerful picture of conversion following the Lord, because when Abraham began to believe, a radical change took place in his life. Very, very radical. In fact, because he believed God, he had to leave his family. He had to leave his home. He had to leave his comfort. He had to leave the land of his forefathers. And he had to trust God, just simply trust this new God, who was the real God, of course, but to him, God had shown up to him, and he knew nothing about God, really. And then now he had to trust him. So he had to leave everything that was comfortable, everything that was his foundation in life, everything that he was security, his own family, his own land, and go somewhere where he didn't know where he'd end up, but he had to trust God. So he put his trust totally in the integrity of God to do this. And going out, not knowing where he was going. I think, when some Christians become Christians and God calls them out of the world and they become Christians, in some sort of very powerful ways. You think of people that God touches and they leave a religion like Islam or perhaps Hinduism, but Islam is very sort of like obvious. And we've known people in our ministry here at Emmanuel who have heard the call of God, and they have had to leave their family. They've had to get into a position where they could never go home to their family because it wouldn't be safe anymore. And they've had to give up the security of whatever that family can give financially or support, and the displeasure of their family. And they've basically had to leave all of that behind to follow this Christ that they've given their lives to, but have got so much more to learn. They're still baby believers, but they make this decision to go on a faith journey with Jesus, no matter the cost of what they had to leave behind, trusting that giving up all their family security, giving up all their culture security, all their perhaps friends and family who are still in Islam, giving all of that up, that somehow God's going to lead them somewhere better, that God's going to be with them. And the journey, they don't know where they'll go. They don't know how it'll end up. All they can do is just trust the Lord. They were called to go to a place where God would give them an inheritance, and they went out of the Islamic faith, not knowing where God was going to take them, but by faith they did it. Now that's quite a powerful thing when that happens. When someone comes out of such a religion like Islam. But for all of us Christians, we have to realize that when we begin to follow the Lord, that it doesn't matter, even if we've come out of a Christian home, that something changes. We have to leave the world. We have to leave the principles of the world. We have to leave the friendship of the world, because James says to us that friendship with the world is enemy with God. And we have to start our faith journey. I don't know about when you became a Christian, if you're a Christian here tonight, and God called you, like he called Abraham, and called you to follow him. That's what it's all about, isn't it? Follow me, Jesus said. He said, come on a journey with me. And at times he was very strong in this call, wasn't he? Oh, well, let me go back to my family first. No, follow me now. Or let me bury my father first. No, let the dead bury their dead. And so this sort of call to follow with radical faith and trust that following Jesus was worth doing. So maybe you became a Christian at school, or maybe you became a Christian at college or university, or maybe you became a Christian, in a different way. But the moment you make that decision to believe in Jesus and his claims and the word of God, then like Abraham, you are going on a journey. You are leaving the old ways behind, the old things behind, and you are moving forward on a journey, following the Lord, and you're doing that by faith. You're just trusting that he's going to lead you and take you where you need to be. And sometimes we as believers can it doesn't always work the same with every believer, but quite a few believers can give a testimony and say that they wouldn't be where they were today if it hadn't been following the Lord. Imagine I wouldn't be here today, would I, in Emmanuel, Westminster? I wouldn't be here today talking to you if I hadn't become a Christian, would I? I don't think I'd even be in London, to be honest. I think I'd still be in the north. I don't know. I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't followed the Lord. And when I began to follow the Lord, when I gave my life to the Lord, I didn't know where it would lead. I didn't know what I would become. I didn't know how it would pan out. I just had to follow him by faith. And sometimes God doesn't tell you the next stage. Sometimes you don't know where you're going to be. You just trust him. And sometimes in our Christian life, God likes to put us in places at times, not always, but at times where we just have to believe him when we don't know where we're going. Lord, I don't know where this is going. Lord, I don't know where I'm going. Lord, I'm not sure how this is going to work out, but I'm going to follow you as much as I can in my Christian walk and believe that somehow, if I just trust you, even though I don't know where I'm going or where this is leading, that you will take me to the place that I will meant to be. And I wonder if we spent time tonight, how many people could testify? Dorte just said she'd never have left her country if she hadn't followed Jesus. But I wonder if many of us could say, well, I would never have done this, become this, done this, found myself here or whatever at different stages in my life if I hadn't, by faith, followed God, not quite knowing where I would end up, but trusting him. So that's the first thing that we find about by faith, that sometimes we have to leave, we leave things behind. And I was speaking about conversion, leaving family, friends, the world behind. But even now, God could be speaking to us to take a next step in our faith journey with him. Perhaps sometimes God will, even as Christians and doing well, sometimes God can say, hey, I've got something new for you. I want you to step out in an area of ministry. I want you to step out and get involved in this, that, and the other. And we don't know, we're not sure, but we just believe that if we follow him, he'll take us to the right place. So there's that first principle, going out, not knowing where he was going, but trusting the Lord that he would be in the right place. Secondly, let me just show this to you again. Secondly, by faith, he dwelt in the land of promise as in a foreign country, as a foreigner, dwelling in tents with Isaac and Jacob, the heirs with him of the same. And so here we find that he actually gets to the land that God said he'd take him to. He's actually in the land of promise. But this is strange because he's in the land of promise, and this is the land that's promised to him, but he doesn't put down strong roots there. He doesn't build the city of Abraham. He doesn't sort of build big buildings and settlements and everything and say, well, I've made it, here I am. The journey's finished. This is the promised land. And so now I'm going to get comfortable. I'm going to build foundations of a city. And he could have done that. He was so rich. But on the contrary, it says by faith, he dwelt as if he was a foreigner in the land of promise, dwelling in tents. Well, what's happening here? Well, what's happening here is that Abraham was in the land of promise, but he didn't get comfortable there or believe that this was the end of his journey and that there was nothing more to be done. In fact, he didn't really feel that he'd reached his destination, even though he was in the place that God called him to go. There was something bigger in his mind. And and he wasn't focused on the land or settling in the land. Now, it's very interesting when you think about sometimes Christians get so concerned about Israel and Israel's land that they get distracted from the main things of the gospel, because they get so distracted by Israel and the land. They get so worried about Israel and the land. And of course, God has given an eternal promise of land to his people. It's not just old covenant, it's an eternal promise, it's an everlasting promise. But we don't have to worry about it so much. We can still pray for Israel and everything. We don't have to worry about it. We're not called in the New Testament to spend most of our time trying to lobby for Israel to get its land. Israel will get its land. God will do it. It's an oath, and we can pray and we can help if that's what we feel called to do, but we don't have to worry about it. We don't have to get too embroiled with it. And you say, well, why? I said, well, Abraham didn't. Abraham didn't. Abraham didn't even build a house in the land that was promised to him. He was there, he went there, but he wasn't addicted to land. He wasn't addicted to land, even though the land was promised to him and his descendants and will be inherited by them. No doubt in my mind. Hear what I'm saying. But he wasn't addicted to land. He saw something more permanent than even the land that was an everlasting promise to him and his descendants. He saw something more permanent, which will come to in my third point in a few moments. So we have this by faith he dwelt in the land of promise as a foreigner dwelling in tents. So what was happening here is that he didn't say, this is it, and I don't need any more, and I've got it. I've got my material possession, or I'm in the material land. This is mine, so I'm just going to build houses and settle here and enjoy it. No, he didn't want to do that. And when you think about the Old Testament, especially when you're reading Genesis, everybody wanted to build a city, didn't they? Everybody wanted to, all these. You read these genealogies early in Genesis, and it's so and so built a city, and somebody else dwelt there and called it there, and they were all wanting to leave their mark on the land and to settle in the land. Abraham was not a settler. It sounds a bit bizarre when you read this. He's come to the land of promise. God says, this is the land I've promised to you and your descendants. And yet, by faith, he refused to settle there. He lived there, but he lived there in semi-permanence. You can't go and you can find places that Abraham visited and everything like that, but you can't find the city of Abraham. You can't find this. You can find the city of David. That was later on, and that was for a different purpose with God. But you can't find the city of Abraham. You can't find Abraham's house. There's just nothing there. It's because he was intense. And so I think what I like about this is that this is saying that even when God blesses us, we shouldn't settle in the blessing. We shouldn't settle in the blessing. Even when God brings us into a land of promise, and by that I mean he fulfills promises, we shouldn't settle in the promise, settle in the blessing, settle in the achievement, settle in God has done this for us and that for us, and we shouldn't settle in whatever God has blessed us with, whatever inheritance, however far we've gone in the ministry, however far we've gone as Christians, however well we've done in our education or our lives, or our families, or whatever it might be, where we feel, wow, I've really received the blessing of God. I'm in the land of promise in this area of mine, or whatever. We should not settle. We should not settle. If God blesses a church, it shouldn't settle in that blessing and think, well, that's enough for me. If God blesses your ministry, you shouldn't settle and say, well, that'll do for me. I'll just settle for this. I'll settle in it. If God blesses your business, whatever way God blesses you, the danger is that when you get too blessed, you become spiritually settled. And Abraham refused to be settled. to settle. He wanted to keep moving. He wanted to keep going. He wanted to keep intense. He wanted to keep mobile. He didn't want to be fixed. He didn't want to be anchored. Now, I know that God gives us roots to put down. I'm not talking about being some spiritual nomad that hops from church to church. But what I'm saying is there should be something about us where we keep that readiness for more of God, for change. I find that sometimes it's difficult for Christians who've been Christians for many years because they think they've seen it all, experienced it all, and that this is all there is. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. It'll never be radically different than this. And they've just settled for the Christian experience or the experience of the Holy Spirit or the amount of kingdom blessing that's flowing. They've just settled for it. They've become settlers in the kingdom, settlers. And although they might keep talking the talk, they don't really expect there to be real change, perhaps incremental, but nobody's believing for a breakthrough. And so Abraham kept moving, dwelt in the land of promise, but as a foreigner. He didn't make it his home. That wasn't his home. He was a foreigner. I wonder if there's anybody here who is a foreigner in Britain. And I hope that you've settled well. I hope that you've settled well. But it may be, I don't know, I can't really talk about this. So I don't know. I'm not saying this is how you feel, but it may be that that there's a little bit of home wherever that is in the world. That means that you always feel that as much as you love being here, you know you're a foreign. You've come as a foreigner, even if you got a British passport. You just can't fully settle in that sense because of your where you're from. There's that sense. Well, Abraham was in the land that was promised to him, but he wouldn't fully settle in it. He wouldn't become a person of the land. He treated it as a foreigner. Of course, when we have people who come over from other countries to live in Britain, we want them to feel totally at home, totally part of us and integrated and everything like that. But Abraham refused to integrate, refused to call it his home. He said, this is where I'm meant to be. This is the promised land, but I'm going to live here as a foreigner. So this leads me to the third point. Why did he not settle? Why did he refuse to settle and say, well, this is it. This is as far as I've gone. I've got it all. I've achieved it all. So I'll just sit back, build a house and settle down. Why did he keep going? Well, here's the third point. Because he hadn't reached the real city that his focus was on. He waited for the city which has foundations, whose builder and maker is God. And if you read on a couple of verses, we'll come to a passage that expands this idea of a city of God, a heavenly city that all these people by faith had fixed their eyes on. So Abraham wasn't interested in an earthly city. He wasn't interested in founding an earthly city. He was looking for another city. He was still traveling. He was looking for the city that was from God, the city of heaven. In fact, let me just show you something here very quickly. I think I should have put the scripture up, but I'll do that. We've nearly finished. 7, font size extra large. Okay, so here you might not be able to see it's quite good, but I'll read it for you. So we talked about Abraham and by faith, and he's looking for a city that has foundations, whose designer and builder is God. And then we come to verse 13. These all died in faith, not having received the things promised, but having seen them and greeted them from afar and having acknowledged that they were strangers and exiles on the earth. For people who speak thus make it clear that they're seeking a homeland, Hebrews 11:14. If they'd been thinking of the land from which they'd gone out, they would have opportunity to return. But as it is, they desire a better country, that is a heavenly one. Therefore, God is not ashamed to be called their God, for he's prepared them a city. So Abraham had his eyes on the heavenly city. He was not an earthly man. It wasn't that these were, sometimes people say, oh, the Old Testament is all about earthly things, about earthly blessings, earthly inheritances, whereas the New Testament is all spiritual. Well, that's not the case. Abraham was journeying and saw something far, far greater than the Holy Land, far, far greater than the Holy Land, far, far greater than Jerusalem that hadn't even properly been built, although he'd visited Melchizedek near there. His eyes, his thoughts, his desires, where he wanted to dwell, where he wanted to settle, there was a city, and one city that he was interested in, and that was the only city that he was interested in. It was home. It was home. And so he and the rest of these people that we've read about, they're called strangers and exiles on the earth. So they were journeying. He journeyed to the promised land of what would be Israel. But in his heart, he was journeying to his true home, which would be the heavenly one. And so he was a citizen of heaven even there. And so by faith, he understood that the things of the earth, even his own promised land, promised by God, was not something to grasp on as if this is all there is, but he treated it and held it very lightly, didn't even feel like building a house or a village or a town or a city, held on to the things of the world, even though promised to him, even though given to him. He held these things very loosely, didn't settle into the blessings of the world and the temporal blessings of God. And they were from God, but he didn't settle in them because his heart wasn't there. He said, all this is great and everything. This is God's fulfillment. And I'm glad that it's been fulfilled. But really, I want to go to my heavenly city. I want to have a tent there. I'm going to dwell in my heavenly city. And so his whole life on earth, through this revelation, was lived backwards, forwards. So he didn't live forwards thinking, oh yeah, I've got this land, I'm going to build a city, I'm going to enjoy my prosperity, I'm going to settle in the blessings. Oh, and then when I die, I'll go and be with God. But I won't think about that. There's too much on earth to settle into, too much on earth to get hold of. Oh, I know I die and I'll go and be God. Yeah, but who cares about going with God? I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about now, the blessing and the earth and everything that God can give me now. That's what. But that was a total opposite. His mind was on the heavenly Jerusalem to come. His mind was on one day I'm going home. His mind was the heavenly Jerusalem, the heavenly city, the eternal city that God's prepared. That's my focus. That's my journey. And that's where I'm going. And so I'm going to treat everything in this life, my decisions, the way I live, what I don't settle into, I'm going to treat this life very lightly in comparison to the glorious city where I'm going to go. So I'm going to live in the light of the future city on earth. That's where my heart is. That's where my journey is. That's where my faith is. So I'm going to live as a citizen of that city, even though I haven't gone home yet. I'm going to live as a citizen of that city down here on earth. So as I close, three great things. Abraham went not knowing where he was going and left his life behind. By faith, he trusted God. Secondly, he refused to settle, even in the blessing. He refused to settle in the blessing and say, this is it, and that this is all I want. He refused to do it. He would not settle. He acted as a foreigner because he knew that his home was a heavenly home. And he lived on earth as a stranger to the earthly things in comparisons to the home he was going and the decisions he made and the lifestyle he made in in reference to his home city in heaven, not in reference to even the great land blessing that God had promised him. So there's a few things for us to think about there. Thank you.